My ex said I was nothing without him. 8 months later, he found out exactly how wrong he was. On my 25th birthday, I thought my boyfriend Lloyd was going to propose. He stood up in front of my closest friends and family, clinked his glass until the room went quiet, and I held my breath. Then he announced he was leaving me. For my best friend Christina. The room went silent. I remember the sound of my own heartbeat, the way my mother's fork clattered against her plate. Lloyd thanked me for being the perfect stepping stone, while Christina sat frozen beside me, her face unreadable. "You introduced me to people who actually matter," he said, like he was giving a toast. Time to move on to bigger things. I'd worked 2 jobs for 18 months to support his music career. I'd believed every word about the album that was almost finished, the record label that was very interested. I'd picked out baby names with him the week before. Christina stood up slowly. I braced myself for her to take his hand, to confirm every fear I'd ever had about not being enough. Instead, she pulled out her phone. "His band kicked him out 6 months ago," she said, her voice steady. "He never told you because he was using the rehearsal excuse to go on dates with other women." She showed me screenshots, photos, a conversation with his former bandmates who'd been trying to reach me for weeks. Lloyd's face went pale. "What are you doing?" "I tried to tell you," Christina said to me, ignoring him completely. "You kept defending him. So I let him think I was interested just to see what he'd do." She looked at him with something like pity. "You failed." Security escorted him out. He screamed the whole way that we'd regret this, that he was destined for greatness, that I was nothing without him. That last part echoed in my head for months. The thing about being told you're nothing is that part of you believes it. Even when you know logically that the person saying it is a liar and a cheat, something in your chest tightens. You start cataloging evidence. Maybe I am boring. Maybe I don't have interesting hobbies. Maybe the only color in my life really was him. I spent the first 2 months after my birthday crying in Christina's guest room. She never rushed me. She just kept showing up with takeout and bad movies, sitting with me in the silence when I couldn't talk. Around month 3, I started running. Not because I wanted to get healthy or prove anything. I just needed to be tired enough to sleep without dreaming about his face. But somewhere along those early morning miles, I started noticing things. The way the city looked at sunrise. The coffee shop owner who remembered my order. The woman at the park who walked her ancient golden retriever every day and always waved. I'd been so focused on Lloyd's world that I'd forgotten I had one of my own. Month 5, I got promoted. Not because I was trying to prove him wrong, but because I'd finally stopped leaving work early to accommodate his imaginary rehearsal schedule. My boss noticed. For the first time in years, I noticed too. Month 7, I went on a date. A real one. With a guy from my running group who'd been asking for weeks. It was awkward and sweet, and we split the check, and I didn't compare him to Lloyd once. Month 8, Lloyd texted me. It was 2 in the morning. He needed a favor. A job interview required a background check, and he wanted me to confirm he still lived at my address. He reminded me of all the songs he'd written for me, all the flowers he'd given. He'd never written me a single song. The flowers came from neighbors' yards. I read his messages 3 times. A year ago, I would have helped him. I would have told myself he was struggling, that everyone deserves a second chance, that maybe if I was kind enough, he'd finally see my worth. But I'd spent 8 months learning that my worth had nothing to do with him. I didn't respond. Not out of revenge, not to punish him, but because I finally understood that his problems weren't mine to solve. They never had been. I'd just been too scared of being alone to see it. Christina called me the next morning. "Lloyd's been texting everyone. Apparently you're the villain now for not helping him." I laughed. Actually laughed. "Let him tell whatever story he wants," I said. Because here's what I learned in those 8 months. People like Lloyd will always find someone to blame. They'll rewrite history until they're the hero and everyone else is the obstacle. You can't control their narrative. You can only stop being a character in it. I'm 26 now. I have a job I'm proud of, friends who show up, and a life that's mine. It's quieter than the chaos of loving Lloyd. Some days it even feels boring. But it's not nothing. It's everything I built when no one was watching. And I wouldn't trade it for any version of interesting that requires me to disappear. I'm 29 now, 3 years after Lloyd's dramatic exit from my life. I met someone new about a year ago. Someone who shows up. Someone who sees me. We got married last spring in a small ceremony with just the people who matter. And 6 months ago, I found out I was pregnant. The pediatrician's office smells like antiseptic and baby powder. My daughter lies on the exam table, grabbing at her toes while the doctor checks her reflexes. She's perfect. All 6 months of her, with dark curls and my eyes and her father's smile. The doctor finishes the exam and sits back, making notes on her tablet. "Everything looks great," she says. "How's your support system? Do you have family nearby?" I give my usual answer. The one I've practiced so many times it comes out smooth. My husband's parents live about 20 minutes away. They're wonderful, very involved. The doctor nods, still typing. "And your family?" "They're around." I adjust my daughter's onesie, focusing on the snaps. "We see them when we can." The doctor doesn't push, just moves on to discussing solid foods and sleep schedules. But the question stays with me, sitting heavy in my chest like something I swallowed wrong. Last night, I was scrolling through social media before bed and saw photos my mom posted. Rachel's daughter sitting up on her own, grinning at the camera with two tiny teeth showing. 8 months old now. 2 months older than my baby. The comments underneath were full of family members celebrating, aunts and uncles and cousins all chiming in. My mom's caption said, "Our first grandbaby hitting all her milestones. Our first grandbaby. Like mine doesn't exist." I pack up the diaper bag while my husband pays the copay at the front desk. My daughter babbles in her car seat, happy and oblivious. I wonder if she looks like her cousin. If they have the same nose, the same way of scrunching up their face when they're thinking. I'll never know unless something changes. That evening, I'm sitting on the floor of the nursery with my back against the crib. My daughter sleeps in my arms, her breath warm against my neck. The room is dark except for the nightlight, casting soft shadows on the walls covered in animals and alphabet letters. I don't realize I'm crying until my husband appears in the doorway. He doesn't say anything at first, just lowers himself down beside me. We sit there in silence while our daughter sleeps between us. Finally, he reaches over and wipes a tear from my cheek with his thumb. "What happened?" he asks, his voice barely above a whisper. I tell him about the pediatrician's question, about Rachel's daughter sitting up, about the social media post that called her the first grandbaby. The words come out messy and broken, punctuated by tears I didn't know I was holding back. "Are you really okay with how things are?" he asks when I finish. "I'm fine." The response is automatic. I made the right choice. I don't regret it. He's quiet for a moment, running his hand gently over our daughter's back. Being right and being at peace aren't always the same thing. I want to argue, to defend my position like I've been doing for months. But sitting here in the dark with my sleeping baby, I can't find the words. "She's going to ask about her aunt someday," he continues. "About her cousin. We need to figure out what we're going to tell her." I look down at my daughter's face, peaceful in sleep. What will I say when she's old enough to understand? That her aunt asked me to hide my pregnancy for months because it made her uncomfortable? That her grandparents pretend she doesn't exist half the time to keep the peace? That I chose my own boundaries over a relationship with my sister? All of those things are true. But sitting here, I'm not sure they're the whole truth anymore. The next morning, I'm making breakfast when my phone rings. My mom's name lights up the screen. I answer while pouring coffee, already knowing what this call is about. "Hi, honey," she says in that careful voice she uses now. "I wanted to talk about Thanksgiving plans." I wait, listening to her breathe on the other end. "Rachel and her family will be coming Thursday afternoon. We thought maybe you could come Friday. That way everyone gets quality time and it's not awkward." "Sure," I say, like I always do. Friday works. We talk for a few more minutes about what to bring, about whether it will be cold enough for the turkey fryer my dad loves. Normal things. Safe things. When I hang up, I watch my daughter on her playmat, batting at the hanging toys above her head. She's 6 months old and she's never had Thanksgiving with her whole family. She never will, the way things are going. What am I teaching her about family? That it's okay to keep people separate as long as everyone stays comfortable? That avoiding hard conversations is better than working through them? The community center smells like coffee and floor cleaner. I push my daughter's stroller through the doors, following signs to the mother's group meeting room. I found this group online 3 weeks ago, desperate for connections that don't come with complicated history. The other moms are already there, sitting in a circle with their babies on blankets in the middle. I recognize a few faces from previous meetings. They wave me over and I settle in, lifting my daughter onto the blanket where she immediately grabs at another baby's toy. We go around sharing updates, talking about sleep schedules and teething and the exhaustion that comes with new motherhood. It's easy, comfortable. No one here knows about Rachel or the pregnancy announcement or the 6 months of careful distance. Then one of the women, Sarah, pulls out her phone to show photos. "My sister just had her baby last week. Look how cute they are together." She swipes through pictures of 2 babies side by side, her daughter and her new niece. They're wearing matching outfits, tiny hands reaching for each other. "They're already best friends," Sarah says, laughing. "My sister and I are planning to do everything together. Swimming lessons, music class, all of it. It's going to be so much fun watching them grow up together." The other women coo over the photos, sharing their own stories about cousins and family bonds. My chest gets tight. I mumble something about needing the bathroom and leave my daughter with the group, trusting they'll watch her for a minute. In the bathroom, I lock myself in a stall and press my palms against my eyes. I don't want to cry here, not in front of these women I barely know. But the image of those 2 babies together won't leave my head. That's what my daughter should have. That's what Rachel's daughter should have. I wash my face and go back to the meeting. No one mentions my red eyes. That night, my husband brings it up while we're loading the dishwasher. "What if we hosted Thanksgiving this year? Invited my parents here instead of doing the whole separate schedule thing?" I stop with a plate halfway to the rack. "What do you mean?" "I mean we create our own tradition, our own family dinner, instead of accepting your parents' arrangement. The idea sits between us, heavy with implications. If we host our own Thanksgiving, we're not just skipping one family dinner. We're making a statement. We're choosing distance. That feels like making it permanent," I say quietly. Maybe it already is permanent. Maybe we're just pretending it's temporary. I finish loading the dishes, thinking about what he's saying. Part of me feels relieved at the idea of not coordinating schedules, not showing up on Friday to hear about everything that happened Thursday. But another part feels scared, like I'm closing a door I won't be able to open again. Okay, I say finally. Let's do it. He pulls me into a hug, and I let myself lean against him for a moment before pulling away to call my mom. She answers on the second ring, her voice bright. I can hear my dad in the background, something about checking the turkey. Mom, I wanted to let you know we're going to host Thanksgiving at our house this year, just us and my husband's parents. Silence. Long enough that I check to make sure the call didn't drop. Are you trying to punish us? She asks finally, her voice small. No, I'm not punishing anyone. We're just building our own traditions. It feels like you're forcing us to choose sides. I close my eyes, leaning against the counter. I'm not forcing anything. I need to do this for my family. We're your family too. I know, but right now, this is what I need. We hang up without resolving anything. I stare at my phone, wondering if I just made everything worse. An hour later, my dad calls. This is unusual. He usually lets my mom handle family logistics, staying in the background like a supporting actor. Hey kiddo, he says, and I can hear the careful way he's choosing his words. Your mom told me about Thanksgiving. Yeah, I understand you're hurt. But have you considered that Rachel might be hurting too? Maybe it's time someone took the first step toward fixing this. The phrase hits me wrong. Someone took the first step. Like I'm the one who needs to fix what I broke. I didn't break this, Dad. I know you didn't. But you're both stuck now and someone has to move first. We talk for a few more minutes, but I can't shake his words. After we hang up, I sit on the couch with my daughter asleep on my chest, feeling the weight of his expectation. His words stay with me for days. Someone took the first step. I replay the phrase while I'm doing dishes, while I'm changing diapers, while I'm trying to fall asleep at night, as if I'm the one who created this distance, as if I'm the one who demanded months of hiding. I remind myself of the facts. I didn't ask Rachel to skip family events. I didn't demand that she stay away from my baby shower. I didn't tell my parents to coordinate separate visits like we're divorced parents sharing custody. But I also can't deny that I've been content to let the silence continue. I haven't reached out. I haven't tried to bridge the gap. I've been waiting for Rachel to apologize, for my parents to see how wrong this all is, for someone else to fix what feels broken. Maybe my dad is right. Maybe we're both stuck and someone needs to move first. Late one night, after my husband falls asleep, I find myself scrolling through social media. I've been avoiding Rachel's profile for months, not wanting to see the life she's building without me in it. But tonight I click on her name and start looking through photos I've been avoiding. Rachel's daughter at 6 months, sitting up and grinning. At 7 months, reaching for a toy. At 8 months, pulling herself up on furniture. There are photos of family gatherings I wasn't invited to, birthday parties, casual afternoons at the park. My parents are in many of them, holding their granddaughter, smiling at the camera. Then I see it. A close-up of Rachel's daughter's face, those dark eyes staring right at the camera. My family's eyes. The same ones I see when I look at my own baby's face. The same ones I see in the mirror. Something cracks open in my chest, sharp and sudden. These girls share blood, share family, share a whole history they'll never know about. And I'm part of the reason why. The morning after scrolling through those photos, I sit at the kitchen table with my phone in my hand, typing out a message to Rachel. I write something about seeing her daughter's pictures and how beautiful she is, then delete it because it sounds fake. I try again, this time adding that I miss her, but that feels like I'm begging. The third attempt starts with an apology for the way things happened, and I'm about to hit send when my husband walks past and glances at the screen. He stops, reads over my shoulder, and asks why I'm apologizing. I tell him I'm just trying to make things better, to fix what's broken between us. He sits down across from me and points out that I'm apologizing for announcing my pregnancy, for being happy about my own baby, for taking up space in my own life. His words hit me hard because he's right. I've been drafting these messages like I'm the one who did something wrong, like my joy was the problem instead of Rachel's demand that I hide it. I delete the third message and put my phone down, feeling stuck between wanting to reach out and refusing to apologize for something I shouldn't feel sorry about. We spend that evening sitting on the couch after our daughter falls asleep, talking through what I actually want to say, versus what I think I need to say to keep everyone happy. My husband asks me what I want from reaching out to Rachel, and I realize I don't know. Maybe I want her to understand how much she hurt me. Maybe I want her to see that we're both mothers now and our daughters deserve to know each other. Maybe I just want my sister back, even though I'm not sure what that would look like anymore. He listens without interrupting, then says something that makes me pause. Reaching out doesn't mean admitting I was wrong. It doesn't mean accepting blame for choices I had every right to make. But it does mean acknowledging that we're both stuck in this pattern where neither of us knows how to move forward. He suggests that maybe I can reach out without apologizing, without making myself smaller, just by being honest about missing her and wanting something different. The idea feels risky, like opening a door I've kept locked for protection, but I also know that staying locked away isn't working either. I pick up my phone again and type out something simple. I saw the photo of your daughter sitting up and she's beautiful. I think about you often. I read it 5 times before hitting send, then immediately wish I could take it back. 3 hours pass with no response, and I convince myself I made a huge mistake. She probably thinks I'm being fake or trying to manipulate her into forgiving me. Maybe she showed the text to our mom and they're both laughing about how pathetic I am for reaching out first. I check my phone every 10 minutes, then force myself to put it in another room so I'll stop obsessing. My husband finds me pacing in the kitchen and reminds me that Rachel might just be busy, might need time to think about how to respond, might be feeling just as confused as I am. I nod, but can't shake the feeling that I've handed her power to hurt me again. At midnight, my phone buzzes on the nightstand. Rachel's name lights up the screen with a text that says thank you and that she thinks about me too. That's it. Nothing else. No explanation. No invitation to talk more. No acknowledgement of everything that's happened between us. I stare at those 2 sentences like they're a code I need to break. Does she mean she thinks about me with anger or with regret? Is this her way of saying she wants to reconnect? Or is she just being polite? I screenshot the message and send it to my husband, who's already asleep beside me, then spend the next hour analyzing every possible meaning. It's not much, but it's the first direct contact we've had in 6 months, and somehow that makes it feel monumental. I finally fall asleep with my phone clutched in my hand, unsure if I should respond or wait for her to say more. My mom calls right after breakfast, and I know before I answer that she's already heard about the text. She asks what my intentions are with Rachel, like I'm some suspicious character with unclear motives. She wants to know if I'm ready to apologize properly, to take responsibility for the pain I caused by making that announcement. The assumption that I owe Rachel an apology while Rachel owes me nothing makes my stomach twist. I grip the phone tighter and remind myself to breathe, to not fall into the old pattern of defending myself while she lists all the ways I've failed. She keeps talking about how devastated Rachel has been, how hard these months have been for her, how much she's suffered because of my abandonment. The word abandonment echoes in my head because it's so backwards from what actually happened. Rachel demanded I stay away. Rachel refused to come to my baby shower. Rachel made it clear that my pregnancy was an inconvenience to her life. I interrupt my mom and tell her I reached out because I wanted to, not because I think I was wrong about announcing my pregnancy. She sighs in that particular way that means I'm being difficult, being stubborn, being the problem daughter who won't just make peace. She launches into a speech about how Rachel has been devastated by my abandonment, and I have to bite my tongue to keep from screaming that I didn't abandon anyone. I want to point out who actually demanded distance first, who made it impossible for us to be in the same room, who turned my pregnancy into a competition she had to win. But I know from years of these conversations that my mom doesn't want to hear it. She wants me to be the one who fixes things by disappearing a little more, by making myself smaller, by apologizing for existing too loudly. I tell her I need to go and hang up before she can guilt me into promising something I'm not ready to give. A week passes with no further contact from Rachel, and I try not to feel rejected while also questioning why I care so much. Every day I check my phone hoping for another message, some sign that her midnight text meant something more than polite acknowledgement. I catch myself drafting responses I never send, deleting them before I can second-guess myself into reaching out again. My husband finds me staring at my phone one evening and asks what I'm waiting for. I tell him I don't know. Maybe some proof that reaching out was worth it, that Rachel actually wants to rebuild something. He sits beside me and says that 6 months of silence doesn't disappear with one text exchange. Maybe I need to be patient with a process that won't follow any timeline I try to impose. Maybe Rachel needs time to figure out what she wants, just like I needed time to decide if reaching out was the right choice. His words make sense, but patience has never been my strength, especially when I'm vulnerable and waiting for someone else to decide if I'm worth their effort. I take my daughter to the park on a sunny afternoon, spreading a blanket on the grass while she plays with her toys. A woman sits down nearby with 2 little girls who are clearly sisters, maybe 3 and 5 years old. They run to the sandbox together, sharing a bucket and shovel, laughing when they knock over each other's sandcastles. The older one helps the younger one climb up the slide, holding her hand and telling her to be careful. I watch them with this ache in my chest, wondering if my daughter and her cousin will ever have a chance to know each other like that. Will they grow up as strangers, seeing each other only in family photos and hearing about each other through our parents? Will they wonder why their mothers couldn't figure out how to be in the same room? I think about my own daughter asking me someday why she doesn't have a relationship with her cousin, and I'm not sure what I'll say. The truth feels too complicated for a child to understand, but lying feels wrong too. That evening, my phone buzzes with a text from Rachel asking if I'd be willing to talk on the phone sometime. My immediate reaction is anxiety, my heart racing as I read the message 3 times. I wonder if this is an ambush, if she's going to use the call to tell me everything I did wrong and demand that I apologize. Or maybe this is genuine. Maybe she wants to actually talk through what happened and find some way forward. I sit with the question for 20 minutes, my thumb hovering over the keyboard, before finally typing back that I'd be willing to call tomorrow evening. She responds with a simple okay and a time, and I'm left staring at my phone feeling like I've just agreed to something that might break me open all over again. I spend the entire next day rehearsing what I might say, how I'll respond if she attacks me or demands apologies I'm not willing to give. I practice staying calm, keeping my voice steady, not falling into the old pattern of backing down just to keep the peace. My husband catches me talking to myself in the bathroom mirror and asks if I'm okay. I tell him I'm just preparing, but he points out that I'm catastrophizing, imagining the worst possible version of this conversation. He reminds me that Rachel reached out, that she asked to talk, which means maybe she wants something different too. But I can't help remembering every past conflict with Rachel, how they always ended with me apologizing even when I wasn't sure what I'd done wrong, how I'd twist myself into whatever shape she needed just to make things okay again. I'm terrified that one phone call will undo all the growth I've made, that I'll fall right back into being the sister who disappears so Rachel can shine. The next evening, I sit on the couch with my phone in my hand, staring at the screen for 5 full minutes before I finally dial. My daughter is asleep in her crib and my husband is in the kitchen giving me space, but I can hear him loading the dishwasher extra slowly like he's staying close in case I need him. The phone rings 3 times before she answers, and for a second neither of us says anything. I can hear background noise on her end, maybe a TV or music playing softly, and I wonder if she's as nervous as I am. We start talking about the weather, which feels ridiculous but also safe. And then she mentions something about her daughter's sleep schedule, and I tell her mine isn't sleeping through the night either. The conversation feels stiff, like we're reading from a script we both memorized but neither of us believes in. Then she takes a breath that sounds shaky even through the phone, and she says she's been thinking a lot about what happened. Her voice does this thing where it cracks right in the middle of the sentence, and I know that sound. I've heard it from her before, usually right before she admits something she doesn't want to say out loud. But this time it doesn't sound like she's trying to get sympathy or make me feel bad for her. It just sounds real. She starts talking about how overwhelmed she was, how every pregnancy announcement she saw felt like someone was rubbing salt in a wound she couldn't heal. She says she made my pregnancy about her fears instead of my happiness, and she knows that wasn't fair. She doesn't use the word sorry, and I notice that. But she does say that asking me to hide something so important was wrong. I feel something shift in my chest, like a door I'd locked tight is opening just a crack. I've been holding on to my anger so carefully, keeping it close like armor, but hearing her actually acknowledge what she did makes it harder to hold on. I tell her I get that she was struggling, that I never wanted to hurt her, but I need her to understand how much it hurt to be treated like my baby was some kind of problem that needed to be hidden away. My voice gets wobbly when I say it, and I hate that I'm crying, but I can't seem to stop. She's crying too. I can hear it, and we're both just sitting there on opposite ends of the phone being messy and honest in a way we haven't been in years. It's not clean and it's not fixed, but it feels more real than any conversation we've had since this whole thing started. We talk for maybe 40 minutes, going back and forth between explaining our sides and just sitting in silence while one of us cries. By the time we're wrapping up, we've agreed to text each other more and maybe meet for coffee in a few weeks. When I hang up, I just sit there holding the phone, feeling like I've run a marathon, but I can't tell if I crossed the finish line or just made it to the halfway point. My husband comes in from the kitchen and sits down beside me, not saying anything at first. He just puts his hand on my knee and waits. I try to explain how the call went, but I can't find the right words because nothing got resolved, but something definitely changed. He says maybe resolution isn't what I should be looking for right now, that maybe we're just learning how to exist in the same space without one of us having to disappear. That hits me harder than it should, and I realize he's right. I've been so focused on either fixing everything or keeping my distance that I haven't considered there might be something in between. Over the next 2 weeks, my phone buzzes with texts from her at random times. She asks what kind of baby food I'm using and whether I've tried sleep training yet. I send her articles about developmental milestones, and she responds with laughing emojis when I complain about diaper blowouts. It feels weird to be casual with someone I've been avoiding for months, like we're strangers trying to figure out if we want to be friends. But it also feels like we're building something new instead of trying to dig up what we buried. I catch myself checking my phone more often, wondering if she'll text, and I'm not sure if that's progress or just a different kind of anxiety. My mom calls on a Tuesday afternoon while I'm folding laundry, and her voice is so bright it almost sounds fake. She says she's so happy we're talking again, and when can we all get together for a family dinner? I tell her we're not ready for that yet, and the brightness in her voice dims immediately. She sounds disappointed, like our slow, careful steps toward each other aren't good enough because they don't give her the picture-perfect family reunion she's been imagining. I get off the phone feeling frustrated because she's turning our fragile progress into something it's not, making it about what she wants instead of what we need. The coffee shop is exactly halfway between our houses, one of those chain places with too many drink options and uncomfortable chairs. I get there first and pick a table near the window, setting my daughter's car seat on the chair beside me. She's awake but quiet, just staring at the ceiling lights like they're the most interesting thing she's ever seen. When the door opens and I see her walk in with her daughter, my stomach does a weird flip. We haven't been in the same room since my birthday dinner, and seeing her in person after all these months feels surreal. She sits down across from me, and our daughters just look at each other with that blank infant stare that could mean anything or nothing. She points at my daughter's nose and says it's the same as hers, and we both laugh, but it sounds nervous and too loud. We order coffee and talk about safe things like pediatrician recommendations, and whether cloth diapers are worth the hassle. The conversation is pleasant but careful, every sentence feeling like it could either build a bridge or knock down what little we've constructed. An hour passes, and when we're getting ready to leave, she suggests we do this again in 2 weeks. I agree because that seems like the right thing to do, but I'm already wondering if we'll ever get past this polite stranger version of being sisters. That night, my husband asks if seeing her made me feel better, and I have to think about it for a long time before I answer. I tell him I feel more confused than anything else because I wanted some big moment of understanding or closure, but instead I got an awkward first date with someone who used to know everything about me. He doesn't try to fix it or tell me what I should feel, he just nods. Like that makes perfect sense, and I'm grateful for that. I book my first appointment with a therapist 3 weeks after the coffee shop meeting. The office smells like lavender and the chairs are too soft, the kind that make you sink down lower than feels natural. She asks me why I'm here and I tell her about Rachel, about the pregnancy announcement, about 6 months of separate family dinners and careful text messages that say nothing real. She nods and writes something down, and then she asks what I actually want from a relationship with my sister. I open my mouth to answer and realize I don't know. I've spent so much time cataloging what went wrong, replaying the birthday dinner and the months of silence that followed, that I never stopped to picture what right would look like. I tell her I want things to go back to how they were before, and she tilts her head slightly and asks if that's really what I want, or if that's just what feels familiar. The question sits in my chest like something heavy. She gives me homework, asks me to write down what a healthy relationship with Rachel would actually look like, not what it used to be, but what it could be now. I sit at my kitchen table that night with a blank piece of paper, and my daughter babbling in her bouncer beside me, and I can't write a single word because I don't know the answer. The next session, the therapist points out something I hadn't noticed. She says I'm parenting my daughter with intense awareness of what I don't want to repeat from my own family, but I haven't defined what I do want to create. I think about all the promises I made to myself during my pregnancy, about taking up space and never hiding and teaching my daughter she doesn't need to shrink for anyone's comfort. But those are all negatives, all reactions against something rather than movements toward something. The therapist suggests that my relationship with Rachel might need to be completely different from what it was before, and that's okay. We don't have to rebuild what broke. We can build something new. I drive home thinking about that word, new, and how scary it is to let go of the idea that we can just go back to being the sisters we were at 23. My phone buzzes while I'm making dinner 2 days later. Rachel's name lights up the screen and my stomach does that familiar flip. Her daughter rolled over for the first time today, and the text includes 3 exclamation points and a photo of her baby on her stomach, head lifted, looking proud of herself. I type out congratulations and then delete it. I open my photos and find the video I took last week of my daughter doing the same thing, her face scrunched up with effort before she toppled sideways. I send it to Rachel with a message saying, "Mine just figured it out too, and isn't it amazing how strong they're getting?" She responds immediately with a laughing emoji and says her daughter keeps trying to do it again, but gets frustrated when her arms give out. I tell her mine does the same thing, and we go back and forth for 20 minutes about tummy time and neck strength, and whether we're supposed to be helping them or letting them figure it out. It's a small thing, just a normal conversation about our babies, but it feels different from the polite distance we've been maintaining. It feels like we're actually sharing our lives instead of just being careful around each other. Rachel texts me the following Tuesday asking if I want to meet for coffee again. I suggest the same place as last time, and she agrees. This becomes our routine over the next several weeks. Every Tuesday morning at 10. Both of us with our daughters in car seats that we set on the chairs beside us. The first few meetings are still careful, still surface level, but slowly the conversations start going deeper. During our 4th coffee date, Rachel admits something I wasn't expecting. She says she resented how easily I got pregnant when she struggled so much, how I announced at 6 weeks when she'd waited until 12 with both of hers because she was so scared of losing them. I feel my defenses rising, ready to argue that I shouldn't have had to hide my joy, but then I make myself pause and actually hear what she's saying. I tell her I resented being asked to hide something so important, that it made me feel like my baby was an inconvenience to her timeline instead of a person worth celebrating. We both have tears in our eyes and neither of us is apologizing exactly, but we're finally being honest about what actually happened instead of dancing around it. The next week, Rachel says something that sounds almost like sorry. She tells me she realizes now that she was trying to control something she felt powerless about, that her anxiety about pregnancy and loss made her selfish in ways she didn't see at the time. It's the closest she's come to a real apology, and I know it's hard for her to admit she was wrong about anything. I tell her I appreciate her saying it, that I understand she was struggling even if I still think what she asked of me wasn't fair. She nods and looks down at her coffee cup and says she knows it wasn't fair, that she knew it even then, but she was so scared of her own feelings that she couldn't see past them. I reach across the table and squeeze her hand for just a second, and something loosens in my chest that's been tight for months. Our coffee date the week after that, I tell Rachel about being pregnant and hiding it. I describe wearing baggy clothes to family dinners and skipping events because I didn't want to field questions about my body, how isolated I felt during what should have been an exciting time. I explain that's why I'm so determined now to never hide my daughter's existence for anyone, why I post photos and talk about her freely even when I know it might make other people uncomfortable. Rachel listens without defending herself or explaining why she needed what she needed. She just nods and says she didn't think about what she was asking me to give up, only what she needed to protect herself. It's not a perfect conversation and we don't solve everything, but it feels like progress, like we're finally seeing each other as whole people instead of just seeing our own hurt. My mom calls the Tuesday after that, her voice bright with forced cheerfulness. She says it's time to be a family again, and she's inviting both of us to Thanksgiving dinner at her house. I tell her I need to talk to Rachel first, and she sounds disappointed, like she expected me to just agree. After I hang up, I text Rachel asking if she saw the message from Mom about Thanksgiving. She responds that she did, and she's not sure if we're ready for that. We go back and forth for an hour, weighing whether we want to try a big family gathering or if we need more time with just the two of us. Finally, we agree to do it, but with an exit plan if things get too uncomfortable, a signal we can give each other that means we need to leave. I text my mom back and say we'll both be there, and she sends back 3 heart emojis like everything is already fixed. The week before Thanksgiving, my phone rings at 9 at night. Rachel's name on the screen, and my first thought is that something went wrong, that she's backing out of dinner. I answer, and she's crying so hard I can barely understand her. Her daughter has been running a fever all day, and now she's throwing up, and Rachel took her to urgent care, but they can't figure out what's wrong, and she's terrified. I don't think about our complicated history or our careful progress. I just tell her I'm coming over and I grab my keys. My husband stays home with our daughter, and I drive to Rachel's house for the first time in over a year. She opens the door with red eyes and her daughter whimpering in her arms, and I follow her to the living room where we sit together on the couch. The test results come back an hour later showing it's just a virus, nothing serious, and Rachel collapses against the couch cushions with relief. She looks at me and says, "Thank you for coming," and I realize this is the first time we've been real sisters in years, not the careful, polite version we've been practicing, but actual sisters who show up when things are scary. The health scare turns out to be nothing, and Rachel's daughter is fine within 2 days. But something shifted between us that night sitting in her living room while she waited for test results. She texts me the next morning saying she's grateful I came over, that she knows things are still complicated between us, but it meant everything that I showed up anyway. I text back that I want to be the kind of sister who shows up, even when our relationship isn't perfect, even when we're still figuring things out. She sends a heart emoji, and I realize I mean what I said, that I don't want our past hurt to keep me from being present when she needs someone. Thanksgiving dinner at my parents' house is exactly as awkward as I expected. My mom has set the table with her good china, and there are too many dishes for 6 adults and 2 babies. My dad keeps trying to make jokes that fall flat, and my mom keeps asking if everyone has enough food, her voice too bright and her smile too wide. Rachel and I sit across from each other, and our daughters are in high chairs at the ends of the table, babbling at each other in that way babies do. My mom talks about how wonderful it is to have everyone together again, and my dad nods along, and I catch Rachel's eye across the table. She makes a face that's barely noticeable, just a tiny widening of her eyes, and I have to press my lips together to keep from laughing. There's something bonding about sharing that awareness, about both of us seeing how hard our parents are trying to pretend the last 6 months didn't happen. It's not comfortable and it's not perfect, but Rachel and I are on the same side of something for the first time in a long time, and that feels like its own kind of progress. After dinner ends, I follow Rachel into the living room while our parents stay behind in the kitchen with the sound of running water and clinking dishes. She carries her daughter on her hip, and I carry mine, and we settle onto the floor with them between us on a soft blanket Rachel brought from home. The babies stare at each other with wide eyes, fascinated by another tiny person, and when my daughter reaches out with her chubby hand, Rachel's daughter grabs her fingers. They hold on to each other and make those gurgling sounds babies make, and Rachel watches them with tears building up in her eyes. She says she's sorry they missed the first 6 months of knowing each other, that she wishes she hadn't wasted so much time being stubborn and hurt. I tell her I'm sorry too, that I could have reached out sooner, but I was too proud to be the first one to try. She nods and wipes her eyes with the back of her hand, and we both watch our daughters together. Rachel says she probably wouldn't have been ready to hear from me anyway, that she needed those months to work through her own feelings without me there pushing back. I understand what she means because I needed that time too, to figure out who I was as a mother without constantly comparing myself to her, or worrying about her judgment. We sit there for a long time, not saying much, just letting the babies explore each other's faces and hands. Rachel says maybe the distance was necessary for us to figure out who we are separately, and I realize she's right in a way that makes me sad but also relieved. Over the weeks that follow, Rachel and I fall into a pattern of meeting every other week at a park halfway between our houses. We spread blankets on the grass and let the babies roll around together while we drink coffee and talk about sleep schedules and teething and all the boring things that somehow matter so much now. It's not the close relationship we had before, where we talked every day and knew everything about each other's lives. We're more careful now, more aware of the ways we can hurt each other, and sometimes the conversation feels stiff, like we're acquaintances instead of sisters. But there's something honest about it that our old relationship didn't have, like we're actually seeing each other instead of just playing the roles we thought we were supposed to play. My mom calls me constantly during this time, asking when we're going to have another family dinner, suggesting we should all go on a trip together, pushing for the kind of closeness that looks good in photos but doesn't account for all the work Rachel and I are doing to rebuild something real. I finally tell her one afternoon when she calls for the third time that week that she needs to let Rachel and me figure out our relationship without her interference. She goes quiet on the phone and then says I'm being unfair, that she's just trying to keep the family together. I tell her I know that's what she thinks she's doing, but Rachel and I need space to work through this ourselves without her hovering over us trying to force reconciliation on her timeline. She sounds hurt when we hang up, but my dad calls me later that night and says quietly that he's proud of me for setting that boundary, that my mom means well, but doesn't always understand that fixing things isn't the same as pretending they were never broken. Rachel and I are sitting at the park on a cold afternoon in early December when she brings up my pregnancy announcement. She says she's been thinking about it a lot, about how she asked me to wait and how hurt she felt when I didn't. I feel my whole body tense up because I thought we were past this, but she keeps talking, saying she understands now why I made the choice I did, but she still wishes I had handled it differently. I tell her we're not going back to that conversation, that I'm not going to apologize for announcing my own pregnancy at my own birthday dinner. She starts to argue and I cut her off, saying I love her and I want us to have a relationship, but I won't let her make me feel guilty for something I did that was completely reasonable. She looks surprised, like she expected me to back down the way I always used to, but then she nods and says, okay, she won't bring it up again. We sit there in uncomfortable silence for a few minutes while the babies play, and I wait for her to get up and leave, or for the tension to explode into a real fight. But she stays, and eventually we start talking about other things, and I realize we just survived our first real argument since reconnecting without either of us cutting the other off. It feels like progress, even though it didn't feel good. My therapist helps me understand during our next session that my relationship with Rachel will always carry the weight of what happened, that you can't erase hurt like that, even when you forgive it. She says that doesn't mean the relationship can't also be meaningful, just that it will be different from what it was before. I'm learning to accept an imperfect relationship rather than demanding either perfect closeness or complete distance, to let it be complicated and messy and still worth having. She asks me what I want from Rachel now, and I realize I don't want the sister who needed me to be smaller so she could feel bigger. I want the sister who shows up even when things are hard, who can disagree with me without disappearing, who sees my daughter as a person worth knowing instead of a reminder of her own pain. Christmas morning, Rachel shows up at my door with a wrapped box. Inside is a tiny red dress with white polka dots, and she tells me she bought the same one for her daughter. It's a small thing, just matching outfits that the babies will probably only wear once before they grow out of them, but it feels bigger than that. It feels like she's acknowledging that our daughters should know each other, should have a cousin relationship even if their mother's relationship is complicated. I hug her and she hugs me back, and for the first time in months, it doesn't feel forced or careful. My daughter's first birthday party happens on a Saturday in January, and I invite Rachel without really expecting her to come, but she shows up with her husband and daughter, carrying a present wrapped in bright paper. I watch our daughters play side by side with the other kids, reaching for the same toys and babbling at each other, and I feel grateful for the messy progress we've made. It's not the fairy tale reconciliation my mom wanted, where we pretend nothing bad ever happened and go back to being best friends. It's slower and harder and more honest than that. My husband mentions one evening while we're cleaning up after dinner that I seem lighter lately, less weighed down by the family situation. I stop wiping the counter and think about it, and I realize he's right. Accepting a complicated relationship with Rachel has freed me from the weight of either perfect reconciliation or permanent estrangement, from the pressure of trying to force something that wasn't ready to exist. I can be her sister without being her best friend, can love her without trusting her with everything, can build something new instead of mourning what we lost. Rachel and I start meeting once a month for cousin playdates, and while we're not best friends, we're learning to be sisters in a new way. We talk honestly about our struggles with motherhood, about the ways our mom drives us crazy with her constant advice and boundary pushing, about our frustrations with being expected to perform happiness for family photos. We're building trust slowly, one conversation at a time, and I'm okay with that pace. Some days I miss the easy closeness we used to have, the way we could finish each other's sentences and knew each other's secrets. But that relationship was built on me making myself smaller, on avoiding conflict and pretending everything was fine even when it wasn't. This new relationship is built on truth, on showing up even when it's uncomfortable, on choosing each other without erasing ourselves. It's harder and messier and more real, and I wouldn't trade it for the comfortable lie we used to live. 6 months slip past in a rhythm of coffee dates and playground visits. Rachel texts me one afternoon asking if we can meet at the park instead of our usual spot. She looks nervous when I arrive, twisting her hands together while our daughters chase each other around the sandbox. She sits down beside me on the bench and says she needs to tell me something. The words come out fast and scared. She's pregnant again. She found out 2 weeks ago and has been terrified to say anything. Her voice shakes when she admits she kept remembering how she made me feel about my pregnancy, how she asked me to hide my joy, and now she's scared I'll do the same thing to her. I reach over and take her hand. I tell her to announce it whenever she wants. Her joy doesn't make mine smaller. Her baby doesn't take anything away from my baby. I watch her face change, watch the tension leave her shoulders. She starts crying and I pull her into a hug right there on the park bench while our daughters play in the sand. My mom hosts a family dinner 3 weeks later. Rachel stands up halfway through the meal and announces her pregnancy to everyone at the table. I'm the first person on my feet. I cross the room and hug her before anyone else can react. My mom starts crying happy tears and comes over to join us. My dad raises his glass in a toast. The whole evening feels different from that birthday dinner 2 years ago. This time, nobody's joy gets stolen. This time, we're all celebrating together. I catch my mom's eye across the table later and realize this is what she wanted all along. She wanted her daughters at the same table being happy for each other. But we had to get here ourselves. She couldn't force it or schedule it or fix it for us. The babies turn into toddlers faster than I expect. My daughter takes her first steps at 13 months. Rachel's daughter walked at 11 months. We meet at the park on a Saturday morning and watch them toddle toward each other across the grass. They're not steady yet, stumbling and catching themselves, but they squeal with delight when they reach each other. Rachel and I sit on a blanket watching them. She says something about how much has changed in a year, how we almost let our own problems stop these girls from knowing each other. I look at our daughters holding hands and trying to walk together. They don't know about the months of silence. They don't carry any of the hurt we put each other through. They just know they have a cousin. My daughter says her first word on a Tuesday morning. She points at the dog and says something that sounds close enough to dog that I count it. I grab my phone and text Rachel immediately. She responds within minutes with celebration emojis and a video of her daughter saying her first word 3 weeks ago. I watched the video twice. It feels natural to share this moment with her. It feels right that we're documenting these milestones together, instead of seeing them later through social media posts. We text back and forth for 20 minutes comparing notes on what our daughters are trying to say. It's the kind of conversation I used to imagine having with my sister when we both had kids, the kind I thought we'd lost forever. Rachel calls me on a Thursday evening. Her husband got deployment orders. He'll be overseas when the baby comes. She asks if I would consider being her birth partner. Her voice is careful, like she's worried I'll say no. I'm surprised. I'm honored. I tell her yes before I even think about it. After we hang up, I sit on the couch processing what just happened. Rachel wants me there for one of the most important moments of her life. She trusts me to be present when she's vulnerable and scared. She's choosing me. It feels like more than just asking for help. It feels like she's saying she wants me in her life for the important things, not just the easy surface moments. The hospital room is cold and bright at 3 in the morning. Rachel's been in labor for 6 hours. I hold her hand through contractions and remind her to breathe. The nurses are kind and efficient. Everything happens faster than I expect. 1 minute she's gripping my hand hard enough to hurt. The next minute there's a baby crying. They put the baby on Rachel's chest and she starts crying too. I'm crying. The nurse asks if I want to cut the cord and I look at Rachel. She nods. My hands shake when I take the scissors. 10 minutes later they let me hold my new niece. She's tiny and perfect and she has the family nose. Rachel looks at me with tears running down her face. She says she's glad I'm here. I know she means for this birth. I know she also means for everything else. For the coffee dates and the hard conversations and the slow work of rebuilding what we broke. My parents host a family dinner 2 weeks later to celebrate the new baby. Everyone's there. My husband, Rachel's husband who came home on emergency leave, both sets of grandparents, a few aunts and uncles. My mom passes the baby around the table. My dad makes a toast about family. For the first time in almost 2 years, it doesn't feel forced. It doesn't feel like we're all pretending everything's fine while walking on eggshells. Rachel and I have found our rhythm. It's different from before. We're not best friends who tell each other everything. We're sisters who show up for each other's important moments. We're honest instead of perfect. We disagree sometimes, and we're learning that disagreement doesn't mean disaster. The dinner ends with everyone taking pictures together. My daughter and her cousin sit side by side in their matching outfits. Nobody mentions how long it took to get here. I find out I'm pregnant with my second child in March. I wait a few days before telling anyone except my husband. Then I call Rachel. She answers on the second ring. I tell her my news and she screams with happiness. Actually screams. She starts talking fast about how our kids will be close in age again, how they can grow up together this time, how different it will be. We laugh about the chaos of having 2 kids so close together. There's no competition in her voice, no resentment, no anxiety about her joy being stolen, just genuine happiness that we're both getting to experience this again. When we hang up, I realize how much lighter I feel. Last time I was pregnant, I spent months hiding it and feeling guilty. This time, I get to just be happy. Rachel and I take our daughters to the park on a warm Saturday in April. We push them on the swings and help them down the slide. They run around together chasing bubbles. A woman walking her dog stops near our bench. She comments on how sweet it is to see sisters raising their kids together. Rachel and I exchange a look. The look holds everything we've been through to get to this moment. The birthday dinner, the months of silence, the first awkward coffee date, the slow rebuilding. The woman keeps walking and Rachel reaches over and squeezes my hand. I squeeze back. I feel grateful for the hard work. Grateful that we didn't give up even when it seemed easier to stay apart. My daughter asks me a question one evening while I'm putting her to bed. She wants to know why she didn't meet her cousin when they were babies. I pause for a moment thinking about how to answer. I tell her a simple version of the truth. Sometimes grown-ups need time to figure things out. Sometimes people who love each other have to spend time apart, so they can learn how to be together in a better way. The important thing is that she and her cousin are together now. She thinks about this for a minute, then nods and asks for her bedtime story. She accepts my answer easily. She doesn't need all the details. She doesn't need to carry the weight of what happened between Rachel and me. I kiss her forehead and turn out the light. I stand in the doorway watching her fall asleep. I'm relieved that she won't grow up carrying the burden of our estrangement. She'll just know that her aunt and her cousin are part of her life. That's enough. My birthday this year falls on a Tuesday, and I'm not expecting much beyond the usual dinner with my husband and daughter. Rachel texts me that morning asking if she can stop by after work. I tell her yes, wondering what she needs to talk about. She shows up at 6 with a wrapped package and both her daughters in tow. My daughter squeals when she sees her cousin, and they immediately run off to play with blocks in the living room. Rachel hands me the gift and tells me to open it. Inside is a photo album, the kind with thick pages and protective sleeves. The first photo shows our daughters sitting side by side at the park, both wearing matching sun hats. I flip through slowly, taking in each image. There's one from the zoo where they're both pointing at the elephants. Another from a rainy afternoon in my living room where they're building a tower together. Rachel has included photos from every playdate over the past year, and I realize she's been documenting this whole time. The last page has a picture of Rachel and me sitting on a bench while our daughters play in the background. I don't remember anyone taking it, but there we are, both smiling and looking relaxed. I close the album and look at Rachel. She's watching my face carefully. I tell her thank you, and she nods, and says she wanted me to see how far we've come. Looking at these photos, I can see it too. The girls have grown so much, gone from babies who could barely sit up to toddlers who run and climb and talk. Rachel and I have grown alongside them, learning how to be sisters again in this new way. I have my therapy appointment on Thursday, and the therapist asks her usual opening question about how things are going. I tell her about the photo album, about seeing a year of progress captured in those images. She asks if I feel like I've achieved what I wanted when I first reached out to Rachel. I pause because the honest answer is complicated. I tell her I've achieved something different and maybe better. We're not the close relationship we had before, where we talked every day and knew everything about each other's lives. But we're honest now in a way we never were before. We can disagree without one of us shutting down or running away. We can be ourselves without pretending everything is perfect. Rachel doesn't need me to be endlessly supportive of every choice she makes, and I don't need her to validate every decision I make. We just show up for each other's important moments and tell the truth about how we're feeling. The therapist nods and asks if that feels like enough. I think about it for a minute. It does feel like enough. It feels real in a way our old relationship never did. That evening, my husband finds me in the kitchen washing dishes. He wraps his arms around me from behind and tells me he's proud of how I've handled everything with Rachel. I ask him what he means, and he explains that watching me maintain my boundaries while also staying open to connection has been impressive. He says a lot of people would have either completely cut Rachel off or gone back to the old dynamic where I made myself smaller to keep the peace. I lean back against him and think about what he's saying. The promise I made to my daughter about taking up space and sharing joy, it doesn't mean shutting people out. It means being honest about who I am and what I need. It means not disappearing to make someone else comfortable, but also not building walls so high that nobody can reach me. I tell my husband this, and he kisses the top of my head and says that's exactly what I've been doing. Rachel texts me on Saturday morning asking if I'm free to talk about party planning. Our youngest daughters are turning 1 within weeks of each other, and she suggests we throw a joint celebration. I text back that I love the idea, and we spend the next hour going back and forth about decorations and cake flavors. She wants a butterfly theme. I suggest we do butterflies and ladybugs so both girls get their own special touch. Rachel agrees immediately and starts sending links to party supplies. We discuss guest lists and whether to have it at my house or hers. I offer to host since my backyard is bigger. She thanks me and says she'll handle the cake. As we text back and forth, I feel a quiet contentment settling over me. We're not the sisters we used to be, the ones who did everything together and finished each other's sentences. We're not the estranged sisters we were a year ago either, avoiding each other and communicating only through our parents. We're something new, something we built together through honest conversations and hard work. I'm genuinely happy with where we've landed.